place, the Reagan Ranch, Heston perhaps felt the presence and comfort of his famous friend and contemporary. It's hard to imagine two conservative actors by trade who had more influence on the political history of America in the last century than Charlton Heston and Ronald Reagan.
You may know that I grew up in the Midwest and that I come from a family of no special wealth or standing. You may know that I switched political parties from Democrat to Republican in the early 60s. You may know that I was president of the Screen Actors Guild. You know I'm an actor who loves politics and a political leader who loves acting. I defend principles I believe in, no matter how unpopular. But you may not know that everything I just said about me is also true about a man with whom I shared much of the 20th century. My friend, Ronald Reagan. That's why I brought you here. Ironically, it was the same year the NRA was founded, in 1871, that this Spanish adobe home in a breezy green valley hidden a half-mile above the Pacific coast. 100 years later, it became the Reagan Ranch. If you want to know Ronald Reagan, you can find him here, at Rancho del Cielo, the ranch in the sky. This modest house is where Ronald Reagan left the world behind, along with its cynicism, cunning, and pretense, to ride and work, to think and pray. Because he built much of it with his own hands, you sense the soul of Ronald Reagan everywhere. His humility, his idealism, his optimism, his belief that good people and hard work can accomplish almost anything. During his 2 terms as president, he spent 364 days here, almost a year. He spent so much time here it became known as the Western White House. He didn't hunt much, but he'd shoot snakes and varmints, especially gophers, whose holes could break a horse's leg. He was proud of his guns and proud of his association with NRA. In fact, Ronald Reagan was the first and only sitting president to address an NRA annual meeting. That day in 1983, he told the gathered members, "You live by Lincoln's words. Important principles may and must be inflexible." Ronald Reagan wasn't reluctant to stand with us proudly, publicly, as a member and an advocate. The gun we gave him that day still rests here. He was a patriot and considered it an honor to be one. He made us feel good about ourselves and proud of our country. Ronald Reagan saw blue sky everywhere and in everyone. And in a very real sense, he blew away the ominous clouds of the Cold War that hovered over us for so long. I remember when he stood beside the Berlin Wall, that great gash through the heart of a divided Europe. Ronald Reagan called the Soviets bluff and demanded,
"Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall."
Very soon, it came down, not crushed by frightened tyrants, but pushed over by the people. Such is the powerful appeal of freedom, and Ronald Reagan knew that. With the wall crumbled the old Soviet Union, and the specter of nuclear annihilation returned to its grave. It may take the long lens of history to truly understand his place in it, but I think historians and politicians will come around to see the great man I saw. He liked to chop wood. He signed the greatest tax cut in history. He hated liver. He loved Silent Night. He hated lies. He loved brownies. He built fences from old telephone poles. He rebuilt our armed forces. He saddled Nancy's horse. He named the first woman to the Supreme Court. He liked meatloaf, cornflakes, and a little house on the prairie. He cut the federal bureaucracy, and our economy grew by 1/3. He He called Peanuts his favorite comic strip. He called the Soviet Union the evil empire. Ronald Reagan brought communism to its knees, snacking on jelly beans. What made him great? A fearless, unflinching, almost innocent faith in freedom. I think it's really that simple. He believed in not just freedom of religion, but in the religion of freedom. He believed that's why God put us here, that fostering freedom is America's sacred purpose. Somewhere in you beats that same belief. I want you to find the Ronald Reagan in you and trust it. Don't let anyone make you doubt it, hide it, or change it. I want you to rekindle your conviction that life without liberty is just existence, that giving up freedom isn't just unfortunate, it's unacceptable. It's contrary to why America is. Like Ronald Reagan, make freedom your test for American life and leadership. Whether in your schools, your city councils, the halls of Congress, or the Oval Office, I want you to find the Ronald Reagan in you and trust it, apply it, teach it, and bequeath it. Speaking of politics, he said, there is no left or right, only up or down, up to the maximum of individual freedom or down to the heap of totalitarianism. Those who would sacrifice freedom for security have, whether they know it or not, chosen this downward path. Ronald Reagan can't hear our applause, our words of admiration. He can't feel the warmth of our affection and the depth of our gratitude. But this greatness can live on through your life because you share his simple love for freedom. Here in this place he cherished, where his presence seems permanent, where his old friends listen for his whisper, one recalls these words in his final farewell. He wrote, I now begin the journey that will lead me into the sunset of my life. I know that for America, there will always be a bright dawn ahead. When the Lord calls me home, whenever that may be, I will leave with the greatest love for this country of ours and eternal optimism for its future. I know he was talking about